Greetings, fellow cinephiles. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And welcome to the X Post Facto, where we dig deep into the career of one of cinema's great modern auteurs. Though he's well known for a certain bat, he has plenty of other tricks up his sleeve, from backwards narratives to a theatrical sleight of hand, from layers of dream logic to a triptych of time.
Christopher Nolan has become one of the most skilled directors this side of Dunkirk. And this month, we celebrate his most original achievements. Start spinning that top. It's time for Nolan-Vember.
Womp! Womp! All right. Sorry, folks. Apologies for the womp. We just figured that, the best emphasis on the womp would actually be, my voice and not a sound effect, because the womp dragon, the womp has become so parodied that what we've just learned in our little exercise of trying to find the womp is that the womp is not going to be the same as how you and your friends imitate it. You know what I mean?
But here's a better way.
It's taken on a life of its own.
Or the better way of looking at it, it's our little homage to Christopher Nolan, and that we did a practical effect when we could have done it. We could have done.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I like that. Sure, let's go with that. Okay, so Nolan-Vember. Very excited to get to this. This was requested from us a number of months ago by the great Romello Malone. So thanks, Romello. We're finally getting around to this, and I'm very excited. Christopher Nolan, of course, one of the big names in cinema in the past 20 years or so. He's really made a name for himself, obviously. You don't have to have me tell you that. I feel like he's very well known for the practical effects, for the original storytelling, and my personal favorite element of him, Dragon, the way that he uses time and structure to craft his films. I think his films, they might not have the best characters in them. They might not have the most... they might not be the most, I don't know. That's the thing about them. They're more kind of narrative puzzles than they are real, down-to-earth human stories. But I think Nolan is kind of enigmatic when it comes to that. He is sort of like this master manipulator in the film landscape. And I think his career is very fascinating to look at. I think he definitely has all the marks of sort of like a Hallmark director where you really know his craft and his style, and you can see a Nolan film just based on, seeing a frame of a Nolan film, you can instantly tell it's a Nolan film. So I'm excited to get into all of these. Importantly, folks, what we're going to do here, this series is kind of a little bit of a take on Spielberg month, where Spielberg, of course, famously does not do commentaries on all his movies. I don't think he's ever done a commentary on any of his movies.
No, Spielberg actually hasn't done a commentary on any of his movies.
And so we thought it was going to be simple. We thought we were just going to be all right, well, let's just replicate that for Nolan, because Nolan, also someone who famously doesn't like commentaries. But what did you discover, Dragon?
Well, I like to do due diligence with these things. Always a little kind of paranoid little voice nagging at your head there. It's you know what? Are you sure? Are you sure? Because, I don't have stuff like The Following. I figured, well, it's his first movie. Maybe, I wonder if it's kind of the young buck filmmaker Christopher Nolan. I wonder if he did a commentary. So I looked at The Following to start with. Following had commentary. Oh my God. Then I go to Memento, which obviously was part of the lineup. Memento also has commentary. And then you get to something like Insomnia. Insomnia, it kind of has commentary. The point being, Nolan's done at least 2.5 to 3 commentaries, which kind of defeats kind of our golden rule there. But of course, all basic again, you go from the Batman movies onward, no commentaries, and he's very publicly said he's not crazy about commentaries. Maybe he got a little self-conscious in the early days. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of Hollywood kind of making Nolan kind of put himself in a little bit bezel. You know what? No commentaries. Spielberg doesn't do commentaries. I don't do commentaries either, but it would sound a lot better than the way I'm kind of throwing out there. But so we're doing kind of a mixture here, folks. The ones that we know for a fact do not have commentaries. We're gonna do some commentaries on them. But you know what? We got to start with Memento here. We're not doing all the Nolan films because again, we've covered a number of them. We covered the Nolan Batman trilogy already. So obviously, that's kind of three out of the number of films that Nolan has done already. So you're kind of covering kind of a selection of Nolan films, and perhaps if we did another Nolan-Vember, I won't make any promises, but when we got to
He's
another
got a
one,
new one coming out next year, right?
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. We have Tenant.
Yeah. So I feel like next year, what we'll do is we'll kind of just work in all the movies that we didn't see or that we didn't talk about this year, including Tenet, and make
Exactly.
that like that's kind of how I view it. This series is like a way more short term version of the Spielberg month project, which is a project that still has a season or two left in it.
Exactly. All right.
Right. Okay, so Memento Dragon. Let's just get first thoughts on this thing out of the way. I'm gonna go ahead and start with you, my friend, because if I remember correctly, you kind of have some I don't want to say controversial opinions on this, but I don't know if this movie lands with you the same way it does with other people.
I haven't said anything of how I feel about this movie. I know you're getting like controversial opinions from.
Could have sworn we had a conversation about it, but
No, never mentioned.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, so Memento. So of course, the Memento very much the rock that Nolan built his church upon within his career. You know, this kind of puts Nolan in the big leagues. You know, this is Nolan staking his claim and also kind of staking his style, kind of applying his style to kind of a psychological thriller meets a kind of a noir mystery. I'm not the first to say that, but it very much is that. You know, it's Nolan going next level in narrative and translating kind of translating character cinematically on screen. It's like how you kind of reflect your lead character and kind of what your lead character's thinking in kind of the cinematic language, if you will. So that's kind of what Memento is. It's I mean, personally for me, Memento is, again, obviously, I'm very much in the bag for Nolan's Batman work, and of course, we get the stuff like Inception on it. That's really where I was introduced to Nolan. Of course, I knew he did Memento, but I didn't quite know what Memento was until again after kind of the introduction. Like, okay, Christopher Nolan, where does this guy hail from? And of course, the biggest thing people would point you to is Memento, and then of course, on the precipice of Dark Knight, and you hear a little bit about what's this other movie Nolan's done, The Prestige. Okay, let's look into that. So it's kind of like another movie with Christian Bale. Okay, you have my interest. So that's like Memento is one that I don't know, was never. It's not one that I often have gone to. I probably went to it maybe twice before we've done this. It's been ages since I really looked at Memento. Memento. Sorry, is absolutely a it's very reflective with Dunkirk, let's say. And Dunkirk is very much kind of like Nolan, the hungry filmmaker, again, like just being experimental with what he's doing. And Memento very much feels like a student film with kind of a budget behind it, or at the very least as like it's like someone playing in the big leagues. It's kind of the feel you get with Memento, and it's narratively it's something masterful. I got to give it points there. It's like, yeah, Nolan was hungry in his youth, man. He was absolutely hungry for the film reel, as it were. And like this movie is absolutely like this is how you go next level with something. It's the best way I can put it. Memento is kind of the next level beginnings of, yeah, give this guy a Batman movie. Look what he did with this. Look, he did this little Memento movie. Give him another one. Give him a big one.
Yeah. This absolutely set the stage for kind of like Christopher Nolan's trademark, just messing around with narrative structure, and that's one of the things I really, really respect about him is that each and every one of his films, we have some sort of hook. And I don't even want to say gimmick. It's just kind of like the way that he likes to structure things. I've seen like flow charts of how this movie's plot is laid out, and it's very complex and intricate, but at the same time, just very intelligent. And for a guy's not first movie, but first studio movie, first major non-independent. I mean, for as much as I know about The Following, which isn't much. The Following was basically Nolan's student film project.
Essentially, well, it was an indie movie, so he had done like a few like short student films, and that's essentially it's kind of like graduated student film into kind
so
of.
It's like a fresh out of film school kind of thing.
I mean, it's absolutely an indie movie. That's kind of what the Following is. Absolutely an indie movie. It's Christopher Nolan, just kind of like that was kind of his Clerks, essentially. Following is his Clerks.
So this is just something else entirely. I mean, this, like you said, the budget is low, but the ambition is like super high on this. I don't know. I'm endlessly fascinated by stories that tell their structure like this. And I don't necessarily think this is the most like emotionally resonant movie. I don't really think any Christopher Nolan movies are that emotionally resonant. Although this movie does have more heart than some of his work, so I'll give it that much. But I mean, it is like just very much a puzzle of a movie and an interesting one to put together. And it's a movie that people are still very much studying the structure of it. And I feel like it will go down as kind of like one of the all-time greats of, the first part of this century, just because of how it sort of blew the lid open on this kind of like non-linear storytelling that I feel like is getting more and more popular as we go on into this into this new era of filmmaking.
Absolutely.
All right. So go ahead, get into some background on this one, Dragon.
All right, some background. So, of course, as we kind of have gone over, Nolan got his indie start with Following. The thing that really fascinates me, as we're trying to do here, kind of get kind of solve the enigma, kind of solve the intricate cinematic puzzle that is Christopher Nolan here, a little bit by bit, act by act, if you want to kind of go by Dunkirk standards. I don't know, but the point being, the thing that really fascinates me in Nolan is that at least out of our lineup here, I can't say everyone, but most, like at least 3 out of the 4 movies we're going to be talking about, there's a theme of brothers. There's kind of a fingerprints or a theme of brothers within this. Where Christopher Nolan's relationship with his brother Jonathan Nolan is very fascinating to me. Where he and his brother, Nolan is very much kind of the Englishman director. Very much, they also grew up in Chicago, hence the very Chicago-dependent Batman Begins and Dark Knight. And his brother is very much kind of got the American experience of things. And he and his brother, they're close. They talk to. Of course, you'll notice many times in the credits it's Jonathan Nolan and Christopher Nolan, sometimes sharing a writing credit, or many a time Jonathan Nolan will be having had done some writing. Of course, Jonathan Nolan's done a lot of TV work as well, kind of graduating from a lot of the work he's done with his brother. So the origins of Memento start with Jonathan Nolan. Jonathan Nolan took, from what I understand, he took a psychology class in college. I think it was Georgetown or someplace. Anyway, or Georgia. Sorry. The point being, he went to college. And he took a psychology class, and this is where he kind of learned what short-term memory was all about, or essentially the antegrade amnesia type of memory loss. And essentially, he and his brother on a road trip, just after he's kind of like on a break from school, he's like, "Hey, let's go on a little road trip." And they go on a road trip, and they're basically kind of chatting about this idea. And Jonathan pitches him, "What if a man with short-term memory was trying to get revenge for his wife's murder?" That was the sell. That was like kind of the sell line for him. Yeah. I guess more like the traffic pitch. Like if you're stuck in traffic, he just pitches him an idea. "Hey, dear brother, what do you think of this?" So
I love this origin because I feel like it's just such a natural way for a clever and original idea like this one to come about.
yeah, it's really interesting too. It gets even better than that. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this. So essentially, the two kind of refine the concept, and at some point, like, again, it's kind of like this grand creativity of brothers. It just really fascinates me here, where the two of them they're really encouraging each other, and at some point, while they're kind of working on the same movie, obviously they're working on the same story. Jonathan, he has kind of an offshoot of like a short story he could make out of this premise, and the two of them kind of splinter off after a while, where after Jonathan's kind of done his work on the Memento movie, he's essentially while the movie's going on, he's writing Memento Mori, which essentially is the same cell again, the kind of the same cell, but it's like kind of a darker short story where basically it's like different, like the character it has a different name. I think it's Ed or something. Point being, it's almost like a prologue to Memento. You could almost go that as far as to say that, where essentially it's a story of a man who's in a mental institution. And he's basically they have the two narratives going. You have the black and white narrative, and you have the essentially, and I forget if it goes fully in the whole reverse chronological. The point is you have like the flashback and a regular story going on, and it leads to him escaping the mental institutions. Basically, him escaping, and you learn like why he's escaping. And basically, at the end, like he escapes to get revenge on the man who murdered his wife. So essentially, it kind of leads into like, well, we don't know exactly what he was doing in between things.
Right.
I mean, again, obviously, it has its differences, so it's not like 100% like an unofficial prologue, but that came out like a year after the movie, so it was kind of I don't know, it's kind of interesting to see how close they kind of were on
Was
things.
that like collected in a book of short stories? Was it written in a magazine? Like, where did that get published? Do you
God,
know? I was curious
it
about that.
it was published. God, I don't have the magazine in front of me. It's
Oh, it was a magazine.
I think so. I believe it was
Okay.
like it was either like I want to say it was. I don't think it was Wall. I don't think it was like the. I don't think it was New York. It was like the one of the New York magazines or not. I'm not sure.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure. Point being, it was published somewhere. I'm sure it was collected somewhere too. I know they put it in something. Oh wait, they put it. I think they put it in like the making of one of the making of Memento books. They put in one of those as well as
I'm
probably.
sure they did. Yeah.
Point being, it was released by itself and probably included within something within the other Memento store. Anyway, point being, it's very interesting. So let's see. So Nolan, getting back to the Christopher Nolan side of things, basically he gets this pitch, and there's a little time in between the like kind of the pitch before he decides to develop it as a project. So the big challenge to Nolan was this. The big thing to crack the code of the whole film was, how do I give the audience the experience of short-term memory? It seems impossible. And again, remember, this is like pre-Nemos, before we do anything like short-term memory loss. This is like it's a rarely touched concept. Especially short-term memory. It's usually the man's like has amnesia, or has a complete memory wiped or something. In this case, like hey, how do you communicate short-term?
Yeah.
Before you have like kind of two colorful sidekicks paired together. Before you do that sort of thing with it, how do you? So basically, Nolan cracked the code. Where, okay, I'm going to withhold information from both the audience and the protagonist. So basically, as the protagonist doesn't know either, so therefore you the audience are in his head as you kind of discover things, and then so this would probably eventually kind of grow also into the narrative idea. So Nolan, as a lad, he loved. I believe it goes back this far. Nolan loved this book. Graham Swift, an author by the name of Graham Swift, he wrote this book called Waterland, where he kind of plays with narrative a lot, and I always kind of inspired him, and that's why he kind of messes with kind of toys with narrative a lot in his works. And I believe there's a little bit in the following where he's toying around with narrative, where it's more of like the perspective of narrative before it's like really kind of jumping around in events.
Right. Yeah.
Because I believe it's like the narrative, basically the following. Nolan had a burglary, and he kind of thought, I wonder what the burglars would think of the place they were burglarizing. And then you kind of, anyway, that's another story for another comment. Well, not another, for another discussion. Anywho, so Nolan essentially he does this kind of almost Back to the Future style chalkboard layout of the two narratives and what he's going for here. Basically, the fans, Nolan loves the intellectualized filmmaking. That's why we love him. Gosh darn, that's why we love the man. The man, like he teaches us terms like sujet and fabula. So essentially, these are sujet and fabula. It's kind of like it's sort of like a graph for how you lay out a narrative. Essentially, if you were like nailed like by the course of a movie, like how you would lay out the two timelines. Essentially, it's this kind of this Back to the Future like chart, like these two lines, where basically have the line from the blood. You insert the black and white flashbacks into the into the reverse narrative. You can look it up on YouTube, folks. It's very cool. So basically, he kind of lays out what he's going for the two narratives. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. So point being, that he applied a lot of due diligence, like how exactly we're going to tell this story. He did research on antegrade amnesia, which is very spot on from all the amnesia professionals, all the people with kind of all the mental health experts in that regard. It was a 25-day shoot. This is the first film with Nolan's trademark cinematographer, Wally Pfister, one of his guys.
Oh, okay.
Basically, this is where Nolan changes from kind of the black and white student film Clerks look, if you will, to going with the full like the 35 millimeters. This is where he first does 35 millimeters. This is where Nolan gets very millimeter interested. It's like this. This leads eventually to the IMAX, which leads to the 65 millimeters, where Nolan becomes kind of slowly. I don't mean a film snob in the sense of this is real film. I mean a film snob in the sense.
No, I mean Nolan is very much like an old school film snob in literally like using what film, like what films he uses.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like, well, what's your millimeter? Ha! I got that. Of course, one last little fun fact here: Memento and following, his first two movies, are the only non-Warner Brothers movies Nolan's ever done in his career.
Oh, okay. It was Miramax, right? If I'm wrong.
I forget if here's the thing. I don't think Miramax did this one. I believe this was it has like it was a smaller studio. I forget what the.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Right. But no, I don't believe it was.
I just know that Miramax was doing a lot of indie indie movies at the time, so that's why I guess I kind of assumed Miramax.
All right, let's get plotty.
Let's get plotty. All right, so yeah, we have two running narratives. One is just a film, kind of a piece where, you know, if you piece it together, you get just a basic string of events of the guy talking on a phone in a hotel room. And then the other narrative, if you piece it together, it kind of doesn't make sense unless you're kind of keeping up with the mental gymnastics of the film, which is essentially telling the story reverse chronological order of how we ended up in that hotel room to begin with, which is to say, am I making any sense with this, Dragon? It's a very complicated pitch, but I feel like kind of like the masterclass filmmaker in Nolan is the fact that he can take something like this and have it be easily digestible.
Right. So, oh, by the way, it was Film Market. That's what I was thinking of. Film Market. They did this one. It had like a film. Literally has a film name in it. It's, man, Nolan loves his film. Darn it. Anyway, sorry. What was that? All right. Here's the thing. So basically, we take kind of the standard noir revenge story. Of course, this is a classic. You know, there's so many, even the ones that aren't set in the 40s, folks. Even your non-black and white, there are noir films that are pretty much a lot of times your revenge thriller comes from kind of the noir basis. So it's kind of like, okay, like Parker, for example, is an example of kind of your noir revenge story. Anyway, so it's kind of a noir revenge story with the twist with the whole antegrade amnesia kind of thrown in there, which of course leads to the ultimate uphill battle. Your guy has like a set number of time, like roughly within like 5 minutes, he's going to forget what happened. Basically, it becomes like it's like sort of like a wrong focus or something. It's gonna like fade away from. It's gonna be in the middle of an action sequence. Like, wait, what am I doing? So the really cool thing is this leads to the bigger question of, you know, I think the bigger question we're asking in our revenge story is, what's the point of seeking revenge if you won't remember? It's a question that's posed to him by Natalie in the movie. I think it's a really great, fantastic question. In a sense, this is kind of, if I read into it here, it's just kind of Nolan maybe questioning the futility of revenge, where again, revenge is kind of the old snake eating its own tail sort of thing. You're going to seek revenge; it's never going to make you feel better. In this sense, like, what if it's literally
not going to make the pain go away?
Yeah, what if it literally, in this case, will not make the pain go away, and you're not going to remember it? So it's not even. So speaking of the structure, we were kind of going on there. So basically, yeah, we start at the end of our piece here with Leonard killing Teddy, kills Teddy, poor Teddy, kills Teddy, and we have this kind of reverse. Basically, the color narrative is the reverse narrative, and we're going backwards, and basically we kind of show the why. Like, why did Teddy have to die? Like, you know, why was he so sure about Teddy? Because he's going by a photograph here that says, you know, that he's the one, kill him. The black and white narrative essentially is that's the linear narrative. That's one's going forward. Essentially, there's a link up by the end of things. When we get to the very end of the movie with our color stuff, we get to the very end of our black and white stuff. It's kind of our prologue for the piece, as well as the kind of the exposition as to Leonard basically explaining what his condition is, where it hails from. Basically, that's what all the black and white stuff is about. But very importantly, it sets up Sammy Jenkins, the whole Sammy Jenkins story. It's all the black and white stuff. So all the pieces.
Is Sammy Jenkins, Dragon?
Oh, Stephen Tobolowsky, of course. No, but very importantly, the whole Jenkins affair. It's this is everything that he thinks he knows about his life. This whole Jenkins affair, basically him as the insurance adjuster. So that's going to be really important again. It's Lenny's old life versus the life that is in constant flux now. So again, the black and white is.
And you know what's great? You know what's really effective for me is the fact that, like, as we're going backwards in time, we're almost sort of like we get lulled into kind of like a false sense of security with Teddy, and we almost kind of like forget about, like, you know, like the fact that, like, the don't trust him thing. It's like there's so many points in the movie where our loyalties kind of like go back and forth between the two main supporting characters, and I love how we get that through the reverse narrative structure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell you, man, this reverse structure it's ingenious, man. It's been ages.
I don't think it's the best structure that Nolan's ever done. I think that might have to go to Dunkirk, but I do think it's up there with like the best structures he's ever done. I mean, he hit it out of the gate really strong the first time around.
Well, something we should talk about in terms. I think one of the most brilliant ideas in this movie was the opening sequence. The opening sequence is so good. We basically have
It's just very economic in terms of just like getting you on board with the premise in a way that's not spelling the premise out for you.
Yeah, and again, also it acclimates you to what you're about to see. So we have these subtle things that acclimate you to what you're about to see. But again, this visual opening is like, okay, so, essentially we start off with the photo of the dead man. And essentially, we kind of. By the way, I love how we shoot this. Essentially, they're running and shooting the film in reverse on this. Essentially, so they're reversing the film, so it pretty much it's as practical as you can get. With one thing, one really tricky thing. So, like the shell, when it lands, it rolls. You can't do that. That point being, getting that shell to roll exactly the way you want it to is very difficult. So they had to roll it and then revert. Basically, this is going to sound all crazy here, but it's like they have to move that forward so it can be reversed. It's really crazy. To be reversed with everything. So at the very least, I might have jumbled that because again, it's very convoluted here. Okay, so we can't just roll it back because we have to roll that forward so we can then reverse it. So everything else, it's crazy. Anyway, point being, it's very clever. So it's very trippy to say the least. But I love the whole Polaroid developing it. Like that's the first image of the movie. We start with a photo, and then he shakes it, and then we lose focus here, and basically demonstrates it's the link to Leonard, like how he processes the world, where he has a memory. We have the new memory, and then he shakes it, basically as if he were developing a new memory. It fades. That to me is like the perfect expression of who this character is visually. This is what I'm talking about with Nolan. The most impressive thing he does in this movie is get you in a character's head, in terms of a character who can't remember things. It's genius.
I love movies that do that. I love movies that get into your head psychologically and make you experience what the character is experiencing. Just going to go ahead and cite The Lighthouse as a recent example of that, and I think The Lighthouse might do it even better than this movie does, dare I say. Not necessarily the short-term memory thing, but definitely the feeling like you're going crazy thing. Anyway.
Yeah. Of course, something really cool, the black and white. In the beginning, a lot of the black and white stuff is essentially improvised, where it's Guy Pearce basically giving knowing what to do, knowing what his character's deal is, and just kind of like talking about it. Remember a lot of these scenes start off with him just kind of like, oh, where am I?
Right.
So essentially, that's just a lot of that is Guy Pearce. They did kind of a documentary thing at the start of things. So we're in the black and white, motel scene. He's basically just kind of like waking up and kind of on the phone talking about his condition, and most of that is it's a voiceover like a documentary. He's just purely kind of improvising and just describing what his day-to-day would be like. Mm-hmm. Of course, the irony is that the bitter irony about this character is that again he is now like Sammy Jenkins, which is kind of a great foreshadowing. Again, he's a lot like Sammy Jenkins now, but maybe
he's very, very similar in quality to Sammy Jenkins. One could say.
Again, that's the.
One could say he's a picture-perfect replication of Sammy Jenkins.
Yes, one could say yes. But I love the great subtle touches. Nolan's the king of the subtle touches, man. That aid the audience. Like we have these micro mysteries, and I love that these micro mysteries kind of solve.
Kind of reminds me of Sam Esmail's stuff right now, honestly.
Yeah, sure. Let's say you have these micro mysteries, like for example, Leonard's appearance. Like, okay, we have a guy. His costume from the movie very much is the blue shirt with the white with the white jacket and pants as well. But more important, like the cut on his cheek. That's the mini mystery I'm talking about. Is like that mark on his cheek. Like usually, okay, why does he look like this? Who punched him? Like what happened there? Of course, we saw by the end of the movie who punched him. How he got that? Why does he have that throughout the whole movie? Like mini mysteries like that. Natalie's injury. There's a big mystery there. Like okay, so Natalie's hurt. We assume we know why. Like she was abused by somebody. Not exactly.
That's probably my favorite reveal in the whole film.
Yeah, I know. We'll get there. We'll get there. So stuff, and of course, big one. Like why is something on her photo scratched out? Like why is there a message? There's the scratched out message. Like all these little mini mysteries are great. And here's the really great subtle thing with their narrative with the color stuff. I'm jumping back and forth here, but so does Nolan. So
appropriate. This podcast would not be right if we didn't jump back and forth.
I swear to God, I did ponder this. I realized how stupid it sounded. I did wonder if maybe we should have done the whole thing in reverse. We should start with our final thoughts, and we should have then. I did think about it, but then I realized that's only going to amuse us and no one else.
God. Well, what we could do is we could have done like final thoughts and then thesis and then Nolan cornerstones and then background. You know what I mean? Kind of like worked our way to the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
God.
Would have gone over so many heads anyway.
All
So
right.
anyways, the point being, the color stuff. I love how the color stuff is driven by.
We have to do the Dunkirk stuff. Like, all right, we can talk about this for X number of minutes, but then we have to devote like an hour to talking about this. But then we have to devote only a certain number of seconds to talking about this. All right, so the so the plain stuff in 60 seconds or less. Striking, go.
Right.
All right. Anyways.
Anyways, the thing with the color stuff is you'll notice the driving thing and the color scenes are not, what's going to happen. It's not like a tense, like, oh God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Because we know what happened. It's what just happened. So that's the reveal of each scene, like the big button that you hit at each scene before. Usually at the end of a set piece, like it's kind of like a two scenes play back to back. Is in okay, here's what happened.
It's essentially like a series of cliffhangers.
Essentially, it's basically the way it breaks down more or less for the whole majority of the film is we have essentially two scenes, and then we cut to a black and white scene, then two scenes. Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, here's what happened, but also what also happened.
Literally 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or two steps back, 1 step forward.
Essentially, no, you're right. It's 2 steps. It's 2 steps back, 1 step forward.
2 steps back, 1 step forward. Yeah.
It's literally what we're. Yeah. Okay. So my point is the driving thing. The color scenes are what just happened, and we end each scene, or at least each part of a scene, at the beginning of the following scene. Hence the whole little double tap of it all there. All right. So again, point being, structurally, it's a bleeping Valentine, to quote the great Marlon Brando, but it's fantastic.
Maybe we can have CGI James Dean come on and also, just give a glowing review to the movie.
God.
Because CGI James Dean is a thing, apparently.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not even joking. I wish I was joking.
CGI James Dean's a thing?
CGI James Dean is apparently something that Hollywood is working on.
You mean they're working on something to say, you're tearing me apart?
Yeah, well, I don't want to get into it.
All right, anyway, let's speak. We talked about this. We talked about one Leo. Let's talk about a different Leo. Let's talk about
Leo. Oh God. Yes. Let's talk about Leonard. Oh God, yes. Lenny. I love
Lenny. I wish he would go by Lenny because it's a lot more chummy. I don't know. Anyway, so Leonard. So of course, Leonard Shelby.
Teddy just always sounds so much like looks and sounds so much like Ned Flanders whenever he addresses it like Lenny.
Oh God, he does look a little like didn't notice.
Well, everyone jokes about William H. Macy being Ned Flanders, but I think this guy is my ultimate live action Ned.
Well, no, I would tell you, William H. Macy though he's a dead ringer for Flanders. He sounds like Flanders. Anyway,
I don't think this guy doesn't sound like Flanders.
Well, no, but obviously there's like if Flanders had an edge, you would be this guy. I'll go that far.
Well,
Anywho.
Anyways, yeah.
Anyway, okay, so of course, in the Leonard character, interesting fact, I mentioned this during the Dark Knight commentary. Aaron Eckhart there were a number of people in consideration. Aaron Eckhart was also considered for Leonard, and of course, he didn't quite make that role. But again, a few years later, the Dark Knight.
So, of course, Leonard, I do think Leonard obviously is the emotional centerpiece of the movie. And, I got to tell you, some of the most powerful stuff relates to kind of the whole idea of him having to relive the fact that his wife is gone over and over again every morning. Like that, I think that monologue that he gives to Carrie-Anne Moss about that is really haunting, Drake. And it's haunted me for like ever since I first saw the movie back in high school. It's just a very somber, melancholy idea of just not being able to, like you can't move on, you can't grow. The pain of that loss is always going to be just as fresh as it was the day it happened. That's the big thing that sticks out with Leonard's character to me.
Here's the thing that really hit me on a rewatch. It's the fact that there's this moment where, again, he looks in the mirror, as many a times he wakes up And of course, when he wakes up, he's kind of processing. He's basically putting together, what's going on, what the situation is. And of course, when he has a shirt off, he has the tattoos and everything. And basically, have this really great show. He's looking in the mirror as he's buttoning up the shirt, and we linger on him reading the John G. raped and killed your wife. And it's like you see him process like the loss again and again. Like that's the thing right there. So that's like he's looking at that. Oh God, that's what happened. It's like and you see in a moment, Guy Pearce was so great. You see the motivation right there. It's like you see like him reminding himself, "I'm going to kill this man." Like that's great. That thing, Guy Pearce, they picked him for this role because he had great range. Of course, what he did before this was L.A. Confidential, but apparently they loved him another. So he did this other thing called I believe he played a drag queen. He played Priscilla Queen. He was in a movie called Priscilla Queen of the Desert. And just seeing the range that he could do from that to L.A. Confidential, and he's really good in L.A. Confidential. But it's just so they picked the right guy.
So, of course, the main gimmick in this movie is like the besides the timeline stuff, is the tattoos. I actually knew about the tattoos and the Polaroids before I even knew about the timeline stuff when I first heard about this movie, Dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. The first thing I was like, oh, it's okay. It's a guy who he can't remember stuff, so he makes mental notes of it and jots them down and so yeah, that's definitely an interesting kind of visually compelling component to it. Of course, Nolan is known for having kind of like visual signatures to his movies. The spinning top being the obvious one in Inception and stuff like that. But I definitely think the signature visual is the Polaroid in this film, and the tattoos, of course. They kind of go hand in hand.
I love the Polaroid so much. So here's the thing. The Polaroid, what's so great with the Polaroid is, in essence, you're probably wondering, it's 2000, essentially, when this movie's coming out. I mean, the digital camera, it's on. What do you think? The digital camera is out.
Yes, the digital camera is out, but it would be hard to get it developed. I think he uses a Polaroid for ease of development. Honestly,
see, I had a different read on it. I think you're absolutely right. I didn't think of that about that. That's the way I should have thought about it. But here's my logic was a lot. I guess my logic was a little bit more flowery. My logic was
because of Nolan's film thing.
No. That's a good point, though. But no. It was this. I thought his system was. It was an undoctorable photograph. Like you can't doctor the Polaroid. That's why.
I mean, that's probably part of it. But like I said, I just think kind of like the ease of which he can get a printed and developed picture and still have time to remember the context of the picture. Just practicality.
But also the indestructibility of the Polaroid too.
So I
thought he maybe picked it for just. And the point being, the Polaroid was an excellent choice for him.
That's an old-fashioned guy, man. He's a filmophile.
No, but seriously, the Polaroid. It's
just because he doesn't have memory doesn't mean he doesn't have taste.
The point being, the Polaroid's a really great idea. And by the way, we have some comments here.
Oh, we do? Okay, cool.
Yes.
Hey, Sibatre. Nice to see you. I remember you, Sibatre. He said it's his second favorite movie of all time besides The Thing, 1982. Mm-hmm. The Thing is a movie I've actually only seen a couple times. I admire it more for the visuals, but I feel like the more I watch it, the more I would appreciate the actual kind of effects and sort of the deceptive quality of that film, kind of like how every character is an unreliable narrator by nature in that film. Then Subitray also says, love Memento. Film is pure genius the way the narrative is told. And yeah, I think you and I very much agree. Nice to see you again, Subitray. All right.
So let's see. So what's really great about Leonard as a character is that he's a living routine driven by revenge as the only truth and fact that he can go off of. As in, okay, this happened, and it's basically rinse and repeat of, okay, what's the routine? And basically he's piecing it together, and he kind of lives by, okay, I'm kind of going by the tattoos, which are kind of the inalienable truths. My favorite logic with the tattoos that they're all placed on his body very strategically in places that he'd be able to look at with ease. Like some of them are backwards. If he looked in the mirror, he'd see them. My favorite one is the one that's right in the middle, of the chest, where he looks down. It's like an arrow pointing up, where it says photograph, as in it's telling him in discerning order what to do. You look at the bottom one like a pyramid, photograph, and then it tells you what to photograph: house, car, friend, and foe. And those are the four things he constantly takes pictures of. Throughout the movie. And again, a very smart call. Just again, it's it's great. Of course, the more
Yeah,
complex
he keeps
things
talking
get.
about routines. Routines are like kind of like his God. What's the word?
Well, they're what he lives for. His routines they're kind of what grounds him. They're
His
kind of what,
mantra. That's what I was
mantra.
thinking. His mantra. I knew it was an M word. Yeah, his routines are his mantra. I'm sorry about that.
But I love that the more complicated things get, the more tattoos that he makes, like the more like new enable information. Okay, like John G, the guy I'm looking for. He sells drugs, his license plate number, like all the details, like kind of tattoos on his body, and of course he saved. I love the logic. He saved the space like right under the whole John G kill your wife, so he can probably tattoo I killed John G like on his body right there.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's really neat. Of course, I love the handwriting. I love the fact he kind of learned to go by his handwriting, so he would realize some people, and probably in the past, or he doesn't know for certain, obviously, but he's like some people might try to mess with you. So you make sure you can read your own handwriting, discern your own handwriting, that before you can trust that you wrote this note.
Uh-huh. All right.
Yeah, let's. So I mean, the arc of Lenny.
Letty. I mean, the arc is just kind of like it's
It's
hard
interesting. That's
it's
the
hard
thing.
to talk about his arc because it's just sort of like okay, like what has he learned
I know
by the
that.
time the movie's over?
That's
Not
what I'm talking
much.
about. It's the fact that his arc is constantly resetting. I think that's so interesting. It's a constantly resetting arc where, I think it leads to a moment of potential change, and it depends on how you read it. Because you have a man who's driven and continually remotivated every morning, where every glimpse in a mirror he gets to avenge his wife. Whether it's like the last thing, like because remember, he remembers like literally his wife, being raped and murdered, as far as he knows, and he literally got his head injury like the second right after that happened. Like it is like the last thing they remember. Something bad happened to his wife, and that tattoo confirms it. Okay, actually, this is exactly what happened here, and I can't remember because of the condition. Like the condition, honestly, is practically his other mantra too. Like, yeah, I have a condition. Like that's the thing.
Yeah, right.
I have a condition. Essentially, that's his Dory's version. I suffer from short-term memory loss. That's kind of. Anyway, so there's a question of like how consciously and unconsciously cognizant is Leonard. Is he making the choice by the end of the movie to end the cycle, which leads to the Teddy's death, or is it like an emotional denial in the moment, like no, this can't be true. I shouldn't listen to this guy, which ultimately will lead to Teddy's demise. I think that's the real question. Is he making the choice to end things, or is it just like something he's not going to remember? So that's kind of the arc. That's kind of the closest thing we get to an arc with him. Like like the choice that gets us the rest of the movie. Like, is that made out of a semblance of a memory, is it?
Is it fair to say that the arc on his behalf isn't necessarily something that he goes through, but more so something that the audience goes through?
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, again, we are kind of in his headspace. Therefore, we
Right.
remember what he's gone through. He doesn't. That's the difference. But,
so why don't we talk about it in those terms?
I guess okay, fine, in those terms, go on.
Well, in those terms, of course, I mean, I guess you want to break down the. Oh God, I'm bad with names right now. For some reason, we just said his name. The
Teddy.
Yeah, no. They can't. Fuck.
Well, just give me someone here. I can help you. I know all the names. Just give me
The patient that he's like
Sammy
interviewing. Sammy, that's it. I'm sorry, I'm getting all self-conscious with my names here. I don't know why I'm blanking on him so much. Yeah, so let's talk about that reveal, because I feel like that is kind of like ultimately the thing that really makes us, in terms of like the stuff that Leonard himself is sort of experiencing on his own terms. That's probably the big twist.
Yes, because essentially, with the same stuff, remember, Lenny has this tabula rasa quality where he's kind of a nice and adaptable guy. Where he's very, he very much can kind of improvise his way out of a situation where he can figure things out. While he's in the middle of things. I think a lot of that comes from the job as an insurance adjuster, basically looking for like people trying to commit fraud and stuff. So the idea we have a clever guy here, and we set that up. And of course, Sammy is the most convenient tattoo that is on his body, where it's like it's on his hand. Like whenever you're washing your hand, whenever you're looking down the left hand, like really almost like the writing side of thing. Well, not his writing hand, but wait a minute. No, I'm just it was one of those things where is he right-handed or left-handed? No, he's right-handed. Point being, on his left hand, like the hand that's not going to be occupied doing things, it says remember Sammy Jenkins. And of course, that's very pivotal.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like the whole idea of Leonard's arc to me is kind of summed up in the whole, like, what do you want to remember? What do you want to forget? Like, if you have a chance to essentially start over with your life in the light of, like, a really, really dark circumstance, like, do you want to just kind of keep on this road for revenge forever? Is closure scary to you? You know what I mean? There's a lot of layers to it, and I feel like the film is left a little bit ambiguous about like just how much Leonard chooses to ignore and just how much he's just kind of like in blissful awareness, blissful unawareness as opposed to his condition. Just, like how much is he essentially working against himself, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
That is the question. Because he's doing a lot of extraneous things he probably doesn't need to do, but of course, memory gets in the way of things. Here's the thing: assuming the Jankus stuff, if again the Jankus stuff is a little ambiguous, we'll get to more of that a little bit later on. But just, I kind of read it as if the Jankus stuff were actual. It's kind of a punishment for this character where, again, he kind of led to the ruin of Jankus's life, where his wife essentially was convinced. She was asking the question that Lenny is kind of living right now, where, does he actually have a memory condition, or is it maybe like an act, or is it maybe something that is like, is it something that he can control? And because of this kind of caused the doubt, and that doubt drove his wife to the end. Basically, drove his wife to kill herself. Drove Sammy's wife to basically essentially kind of have herself off by Sammy's memory, which is terrifying.
It really is a dark way to go.
Here's what the really dark thing is. So that actress. The actress, I believe, is Harriet Sansom Harris. And that lady, I remember her from Frasier. She's Frasier's agent.
Oh, God.
Which, by the way, a little fun. I love to think that Christopher Nolan watches Frasier. I love to think that personally. Here's the thing. We always put Nolan on a pedestal, which, he's earned he's earned a spot on a pedestal because he's really good. And this fact of the matter is, it's so rare to humanize Nolan because, sometimes you wonder, man, I wonder what Nolan does on the side sometimes. I wonder if he would just chill out and watch Frasier now and again. Nolan needs entertainment.
Well, I mean, Nolan's a sophisticated guy, so Frasier does have sophistication to it.
I'd like to think that, That's what I'm saying. I mean, I could buy Nolan liking Frasier, and I love that. I love that BB character because his agent's name was BB, and Frasier. Kelsey Grammer, this hilarious thing, was just BB. Whenever she'd do something outrageous, like baby. Anyway, sorry. Point being, it's just comedic actress doing something really dark, which is basically insulating yourself to death. It's just to see if her husband would notice. Oh, God, it's so dark anyway. But yeah, anyway, so again, our guy kind of definitely a smart and capable character. Maybe it's kind of like ruining some fruit that he kind of he's ruined some other lives because he doubted memory. Now he's suffering from the same exact thing that he was kind of investigating all this time. That was his fate. So I guess, in regards of kind of the revenge story of it all, this is the last thing we should talk about in regards to the arc, unless you had anything major, would be the fact that, so we start things off with a mystery, like we have a protagonist, therefore we're in the corner of our protagonist. We kind of learn a little bit about him. He's kind of a sad sack. Therefore, we, the audience, are kind of in the headspace of what our guy's dealing with. Or basically, likable guy, not a care in the world except for the sad, tragic thing that happened in his past, where he's driven by tragedy. But it's overall, can't remember all the bad stuff he encounters. Like he's kind of a happy-go-lucky, friendly guy for the most part.
Right, yeah, and no, I'm seeing what you're getting at. It's like he is. I mean, Leonard. I mean, let's face it. He's like the ultimate unreliable narrator. It's like that's. He's a very likable guy, but at the end of the day, just by its very nature, he doesn't even trust himself.
Yeah, but again, not for dubious purposes, just for the fact that he's
just medically, yeah.
Again, people either take advantage of this or they pity him, and I think we, the audience, at the beginning, we pity him, And one could argue, if you really want to be, you want to over intellectualize, we take advantage of that as the audience in the middle to see him do stuff.
Ooh, shit.
We do,
You
yeah.
just meta, son.
That's what I'm saying in the middle. Like, we take advantage of him so we can see him do stuff. And by the end of things, again, it's a question. Do we still pity him, or do we do we still pity him by the end of things, knowing that again he's put again, because that's what I'm getting at the whole question of things. Where again, does he make the cognitive choice to get Teddy to actually murder Teddy by the end of things, or is it just like in the moment, like don't trust this guy, which ipso facto leads to him killing Teddy by the end?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So again, pity, or again like advantage for the audience. Woo. Anywho,
yeah.
Right. Okay,
so let's break down Natalie's role, the whole like who do you trust angle of the whole thing.
Yes. So, of course, the lovely Carrie-Anne Moss. I gotta tell you, this is probably one of the finest things I've ever seen Carrie-Anne Moss in. I tell you, she is. This is Carrie-Anne Moss post Matrix, post the first one. It's like
I feel like especially in the scene where she kind of reveals her true intentions, man, she is just genuinely scary. Oh my god!
I liked her from the first scene, but again, it's them turning that in on its head. You liked her, and it's like, oh god, she's so evil.
I mean, I got to admit, Dragon, I was kind of like taken aback rewatching this thing, just how hard hitting that moment was.
It's like not just evil; it's retroactively evil. That's the thing. It's like when you think about her, when you rewatch, like, oh god, and all the stuff you found likable about her, all those scenes where you're kind of building some trust, is like, oh, it's just so tainted now. It's like, oh, Carrie, why? But yeah, she delivers this great and layered performance. Again, very much she's so modern femme fatale. Again, it's very new. Again, it's like no, this is absolutely the most noir thing in the movie. You have like this femme fatale who again, it's like you think it's like a Maltese Falcon. They're like you like her, and by the end, it's a betrayal. It's like oh, why? And this again, it's very much kind of like the neo noir acting, kind of neo noir quality, very much so.
Dragon, just to circle back to Leonard really quick,
yeah.
We have some theories by Simba Trey here. He says, what do you think most likely happens after Leonard kills Teddy? He has a couple theories. He says, like, number one, he chooses to hunt for the dead Teddy, choosing to ignore any evidence that Teddy is already dead. Number two, choosing to stop hunting, believing that Teddy is the second attacker, or number three, delete or edit his current clues and begin to hunt for other victims. If he does get caught by the police, he may, one, be put into a more secure facility, go to prison, or go to a facility for the criminally insane. So lots to unpack there, but essentially, as far as I've read the movie, I like to think that he is just like the hunt for him is what's keeping him going. It's not necessarily getting the result, it's the hunt itself. And so I do think that until he gets captured, he is going to just keep making like false memories and kind of like, writing over these details and kind of conveniently forgetting that John G could be any number of people. And I think after the film ends, he's just going to, especially with Teddy gone, and Teddy, of course, was a little bit of a kind of a guiding light for him. I really do think, sooner rather than later, he will be caught, and I would probably say go to a prison for the criminally insane. But until then, I do think he is just going to kind of like continue with his mission of vengeance.
Well, here's the thing. When you really, there's a lot of interesting ways to go with that, but I tell you, if you want to look at the logic of it all, well, remember, he has clues tattooed on his body, and updated clues tattooed on his body. And the last updated clue, which was the pivotal one that revealed Teddy as John G, essentially, was the license plate number, and that car is still around. So what he's going to find is, so again, post Teddy, again, memory's going to reset as it tends to do. He's the question is like if he has the license. Remember, he had the plates were Natalie knew a friend who ran the plate, basically got back with the identity. So if assuming he doesn't have that piece of paper on him, might be at the apartment, which of course over time he might even forget about that even. Whether he just finds that again and then he'll know, or most likely that paper's gone, he's going to be in a different location by the end of things. If I'm a betting man, I imagine it could just be an endless cycle. He's going to find the license plate, he's going to find the car, and probably going to lead to like an impound lot or a junkyard at some point. And maybe he'll find out that it's Teddy. So it's an excellent question that's being posed here. Eventually, it would have to lead to Teddy as the guy. If you look at it, he could honestly be at peace if he thinks, okay, well, logically I've gotten the guy. But he would have to reinvestigate the murder of Teddy. So essentially, that's the new mystery.
Right,
it's like
right.
he's gonna have to investigate. Okay, was Teddy the guy? Basically, he's gonna have to find Teddy's body, which eventually, I think will grow increasingly difficult, which will lead to his capture. And I just my own headcanon, I like to think it's gonna end up in Jonathan Nolan's movie. So it's gonna be the Memento Mori, where he's gonna end up in a mental facility that he may escape at some point. Again, thinking he has to go on the whole ride
thinking
again.
he has to go for revenge and forgetting that he got revenge in the first place.
That's the thing. It's probably good if there's ever a sequel to Memento, which there never will be. Let's be honest. If there were,
It'd be crazy if there was.
they'd call it Memento Mori, and and it would basically be him escaping a mental institution, going the whole ride again, but probably be gunned down by the police, and the whole Mori of it all. Basically, Memento Mori is remember you're dead. So,
all
right.
Okay, so yeah, back over to Natalie here. Where were we?
Yeah, so now, of course, the big question is like, who do you trust? So with that, it's she's the prime.
Clearly, out of everyone in the movie, definitely not her.
No,
she is essentially kind of just the person who puts the plot in motion of like, okay, she basically puts Leonard into a more complicated situation than he is used to for the system that he has put in place. And because of that, she's kind of the one who unravels everything.
See, the real answer is the only person you trust in the movie is the motel guy.
Yes,
the manager. Yes. And even then, I mean, he's still being dishonest, but he'll tell you that he's being dishonest. So that's the difference.
Right.
It's the closest thing to trust he has in the movie. Well, I don't know. Actually, wait a minute.
That motel guy kind of has. Hold that thought. That motel guy kind of has like a little bit of a quality of the veterinarian from Breaking Bad.
A little bit.
He's just kind of like holding down like a lot of the seedy stuff that's going on around him, but he's kind of like a Switzerland in terms of his allegiances.
Yeah, the vet from Better Call Saul for the kids out there.
Right.
Anyway, but actually, I can one up that. There's actually one legitimately trustworthy person in the whole movie. There is. Tattoo lady.
Yeah, no, for sure.
She is. The tattoo lady is actually the
I can't argue with that.
Anyway, she actually looked out for his best interest. Like, hey, you shouldn't be in here. That old age. She was looking out for him. Okay, in all seriousness, back to Natalie here. So again, Natalie's the prime example and foreshadow to Leonard being taken advantage of, which he is by Teddy. Eventually, we're gonna learn. So again, she's kind of a preparation for the big twist of the movie by the end of the thing. So, of course, she has kind of like we have some romantic potential stuff going on with her. There's like a one night stand. Again, she has kind of the classic femme fatale stuff before it turns into the fatal stuff of it all. She's basically we strip away all of that trust with the reveal that as she so cruelly points out, his memory lapses make him a freak. And I love how we use freak. We use freak in two very effective places in the movie. She calls him a freak, but importantly, Teddy's last words are "you freak." By the way,
yeah, I mean, she just goes like really vicious on him, and it's like like she specifically attacks the whole like, and you're not going to remember this in 5 minutes anyway, so I can just say whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah. I was reading the comments here. Symmetry might have some logic here about the whole about the Teddy thing. Didn't in the film Teddy mention that he was covering all Leonard's tracks and using police access to cover the paper trails? Because Leonard's organization he would leave a huge and easy trail. Yeah, it would leave an easy trail to follow. I definitely think without Teddy, he will. Hey, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Fair point.
Okay, more on the other stuff when we get to it. So, okay, all right, let's see. That's the thing. So again, so horrific. Yeah, you're not even. She insults the wife, and he won't even remember. We're gonna be friends, even lovers. That's the real creepy part. And of course, we see in the movie they do become friends and lovers. And it's like, oh god, she's doing. And again, as we know, as the reverse narrative goes, we know after those early scenes we built up the trust and like okay, things are going great for Team Lenny here. Lenny's found a nice girl by the name of Natalie.
Oh god,
she's helping him out. She helped him find the guy. As far as we, the audience, know, probably more to it. And that we'll worry about that while we get closer to the end of the movie, which is more the beginning of the movie. Same difference, regardless. Everything's good. It's a great A smiling day for old Leonard Shelby, but. Not the case. Just absolutely not the case. Where she's just like all these again. The fact that she basically takes like him with a smile on her face. She takes the hits that he's given her. Like he gets really upset as he would. He hits her, and again, it's a tense moment. And I love Leonard's kryptonite. I love that Leonard's kryptonite is so simple. When he's without a pen.
Yeah.
No pen, Leonard's in trouble. I love it. And of course, it's so haunting the way we see his memory actually go away, where he's looking for a pen, and while he's doing that, she's literally goes outside, she sits in the car and
Just
waits.
sits in the car, kind of twiddling her thumbs, looking at the clock.
And then we hit the button where we re-enter the previous scene, where we link up, and she just walks in, and he just forgets, and he trusts her. And then literally in that moment, maybe not in that moment, but a little. The point is, they after he comes back, panicked about what happened, they sleep together. It's like, oh god.
Mm-hmm.
So let's bridge us into the whole Dodd of it all. Let's get at it. They gotta get him out of Dodd instead of Dodge. But so the whole Dodd affair. The funny thing about the Dodd affair is that in the rewatch, I kind of noticed that Dodd was coming for Natalie because, remember, Dodd was involved with Jimmy Grants. Jimmy Grants is our other John or James. Remember, John or James Grants. Remember, that's the other potential. It was a J name. It was either John or Jimmy. So Jimmy Grants here, he was a drug dealer since he's involved in drugs, which is indicated on the arm. And we then learned that this guy was affiliated with him. So because Jimmy's gone missing and the money's gone missing, all of that's in his car. Point is, Jimmy seemingly is split, and Natalie was dating Jimmy. So Dodd's coming to Natalie, looking for answers there. And of course, all of this has been triggered by all of this is because of Lenny, and because of this, it's going to cause the sinister turn by Natalie when you really think about it. Because Mary, Here's the really chilling thing. Is that he's just being pleasant in the moment, just asking, "Oh, why is that happening?" And of course, she just completely loses it on him there, and that's why she insults him, and it leads to her doing all the sadistic stuff she does later.
Right.
It's just, but again, he kind of brings it on himself. Technically, it's twisted. But yes, the Dodd affair. What do you feel about the Dodd affair overall?
I mean, I just think it's kind of a good sort of plot device to get things where they need to go for things to unravel. It's kind of just the break in the status quo. And in this case, the status quo is, a challenging status quo, which is Lenny's kind of like day-to-day existence of not remembering what happens. But, his system gets broken. You know what I mean? Like the Dodd affair kind of throws everything off. It kind of like it makes the long con that Teddy has been playing with Leonard a lot more complicated on Teddy's end. It kind of like it's sort of the first domino that falls. And I feel like it's kind of like right in the middle of the narrative. Like, we don't know a lot about Dodd on a personal level, really. We don't know a ton about him as a character. All we know is that he's a bad dude and that he kind of set a bunch of things in motion from a narrative point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I love this. Dodd's to me is like it's a clever misdirect and just kind of a fun side adventure. I gotta tell you, a lot of funny stuff in the movie comes from the Dodd story. If I'm being frank, it's really a lot of funny stuff happens where it's something we like Leonard, we trust and like Natalie at this point before we reveal like the motivations that led to the whole Dodd thing. It's just this situation and this I just love hilariously Leonard waking up to rediscover this twice. It's like rediscovering all this twice. We're like, okay, see, basically, kind of he goes in the apartment to find a weapon, and then he just kind of forgets, and then he's like, I don't feel drunk. Or then again, and on the second time we forget the second time we check in, he goes for the shower, and then he kind of completely forgets, like, oh yeah, I was getting ready to knock him out, and they completely forgot this. So he has to, again, he's improvising while he's in the shower and everything, and then having to take the guy, and then he forgets the actual second time, where it's the next morning. He's okay, going for the old Gideon Bible and a gun. And it's like all the funny stuff is here. It is. I think to me the most hysterical moment in the movie for me. It's not like a ha funny movie. There's some genuine funny.
The Lighthouse also has like moments of like uncomfortable humor based on the absurdity of the situation. So yeah, go ahead.
I just love that he goes to the sliding closet door, and he kind of finds him there, and he closes it. And we have this gag where after he loops Teddy and as to what's going on, it's just Ask him who he is. He just opens the door, says like, who am I? Who did this to you? Essentially, he's asking like, what's your name and who did this to you? You did. And everybody's retapes, so he closes and just go back to talk. I think it's really funny. It's how casual they're being. That's what I'm saying. I love how casual a misadventure this is along the way. It's almost like it's kind of a funnier version, like what do we do with Crazy Eight's Breaking Bad situation?
Oh God, yeah, for sure.
That sort of thing. Well, we run them out of town. That's what I'm saying. Like, this little misadventure. It doesn't feel like wasted screen time at all. It just feels like, okay, it's a little funny misadventure, but also is kind of a foreshadow in what led to the Dodd situation. Basically, again, this is a foreshadow within the grander Natalie story. So it feels appropriate, but also feels fun, but also again ingratiates us to Teddy. We're building up a lot of trust with Teddy here. Which again, the whole time we're supposed to be thinking, man, we really like Teddy from the start. I mean, surely,
exactly.
we like it's supposed like we the audience, we the discerning audience, let's say, think, okay, Teddy couldn't possibly, it can't. If Teddy was a really bad guy and we just killed him at the start of things, not really a complicated movie. Over time, we build up some trust. Like, was Leonard right when he killed the guy? Because it was kind of a vague instruction on that list. I mean, it said, kill him. Do not believe a word he says. Like do not believe his lies. He's the one. Kill him. You're going to trust yourself. And you trust your own handwriting. So you killed a man based on a photograph, writing on a photo. So interesting. Oh, remember the chess is really. Oh, the one more thing I want to say with Carrie-Anne Moss. I think the most chilling line she ever has in the entire movie is. A retroactively chilling line is after the one night stand when he's about to leave. He says, "You're not going to remember me, are you?" He says, "I think you will." She says that so sinisterly. I think you will, in the sense of he's not going to remember her, but in the sense of like she at that point she's saying, "I think you will remember me." But I don't know. It's a sense of she says it so sure of herself. She says, like, why would she say, I think you will? She says, I just got away with, doing what I said I was going to do earlier. You're going to be lovers despite all the horrible stuff I said about you. I manipulated. I had you kill, essentially, run that guy, take care of my problems for me. I will say this, though. Did you think the spit scene was kind of weird?
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't really bother me too much.
And the bar is kind of weird. Again, not a bad scene. It's a little weird. All right,
so let's get into Teddy. Of course, this is kind of like having to do with the main mystery, the Sammy Jenkins reveal and all that. So yeah, like you said, Dragon, we're kind of like deconstructing the Teddy character, where it's like at the very beginning, I feel like the dude does kind of have this quality to him where he maybe looks a little too neighborly, like there's almost something off about him. And so you do kind of like you said, we develop trust with him throughout the course of the movie, and then it kind of gets all teared down towards the end, and we still wonder about it. It's a very interesting role that he has. Essentially, I like to think of Teddy as almost kind of like a more kind of like a more realistic version of Harry from Dexter, where Teddy is kind of like he doesn't mean harm to Leonard, but at the same time, he's kind of like, everything that Leonard's doing, like Simba Trey pointed out, he's getting away with because Teddy is covering his tracks. It's like, so Teddy is in a way kind of like Leonard's sort of guiding light.
Yeah, he's sort of guardian angel like in that regard. So Teddy's played by the wonderful Joe Pantoliano. Now, Joe Pantoliano, he was recommended because he was in The Matrix with Carrie-Anne Moss, and that's kind of what got him the job. She recommended him. And here's the thing, Joe Pantoliano, I think it was probably before this point, but Joe Pantoliano, you've seen him in things. This guy's been in a lot of things. He was in Daredevil, in the movie Daredevil. He was in Empire of the Sun when we talked about that. He was John Malkovich's. He was John Malkovich's buddy before Christian Bale's kid came along there.
Right, right.
And he's in The Fugitive, but importantly, like this guy's known for playing a lot of bad guys, and the main bad guy role I can cite is Ralphie from The Sopranos. Like that's the big one. He was the really rotten guy that he played there, and the idea is like this guy's kind of has a reputation up to that point of playing bad guys, and they kind of work that into their advantage. Like you don't know if he's kind of a skeezy guy, you don't know if you can trust him, and it's just I think that great performance just complements the narrative perfectly in that regard. That he's sketchy enough that you buy that he's the murderer, but he's also comic relief, and the chemistry kind of makes you like him. He's like calls him Lenny, even though he doesn't like it, but he's always there as like kind of he's the positive guy in the room. He's helping them out. He
is helping him out, like very much so. That's kind of the key thing. Yeah. Is like, and why is he helping him out? What motivation does he have to help him out?
Exactly, and we develop this trust, and again we peel back the layers leading to the death. They're like, oh man, why'd you have to go kill Teddy, Lenny? Come on.
Kind of like a reverse mice and men situation, if you really think about it.
Yep.
The guy with mental problems named Lenny.
Yeah. Oh, Teddy just wanted to see the rabbits.
Oh God.
In reality, Teddy wanted to go to the Playboy Mansion, so that's how you get your rabbits in there. But
I just wanted to see the Playboy Mansion, George.
Just wanted to pet the bunnies. Anyway,
oh,
so the big twist of it all here. So we learn. Let's fully dive into Teddy's thing. So Teddy is not only a John G. Like Teddy's real name is John G. But I believe Gamble or St. John Gamble. Anyway, so he's not only John, but he's John G. But he's a corrupt cop. So we learn that presumably, they don't say this explicitly, but just piecing it together. He's the one on the phone because earlier in the scene he said, earlier in the scene he's basically trying to get the whole movie. His motivation is this: he needs again for Lenny's own protection, mind you, and for basically cover both again for covering tracks. He needs to get Jimmy Grant's car with the money in the trunk, all of that. He wants the money for himself, but he wants the car. He needs to get rid of the car, which is evidence, and get him out of those clothes. That's what he wants the entire movie, just to get rid of, basically wants to take a style away from him, if you want to look at it that way. But no, basically, he needs to cover his tracks and just kind of get all the Jimmy Grant's like drug dealer kind of vibe off of him so he can go back and kind of rinse and repeat what they usually do.
Yeah.
And of course, that's tricky given the fact that he can only do so much before the end. And this is a guy who plays things really close to the vest. Therefore, he can't really. He has to reconvince him to trust him every time. It's a whole involved thing. But again, he is. He presumably he's also like on the phone, like learning all the information about the condition and everything. The Sammy Jankus of it all. Presumably, I assume he's the guy on the phone because he knew about the phone calls and everything.
I didn't even know it was ambiguous that he wasn't the guy on the phone.
I'm saying it's assumed, but they don't say it. So I'm saying I think it's pretty assumed that he's the guy on the phone because he's talking to a cop on the phone. This guy's a corrupt cop. It's pretty safe to assume.
Right.
Anyway, so importantly, again, plus the cop that he'd be dealing with would probably be this guy in the first place. So therefore, he'd probably be another rinse and repeat in that.
Well, that's where the reveal kind of comes in for me is the fact that like he has been working with Lenny ever since the incident, this is like a long-term relationship that these two have. It's it's not just kind of a kind Samaritan who offered to help off the street,
Because the idea is like they solved the mystery, like they found the actual real. Well, again, according to Teddy, and again, you take it with a grain of salt because we don't know how trustworthy Teddy is. I buy it though. Let me put it this way: I buy 75% of what Teddy's saying in this scene. In that, I believe Teddy, basically, up until I think the only thing in question is the Sammy Jankus thing, which, again, could be true. Absolutely could be true. I'm not saying that to me is the thing that's really, truly ambiguous to me. But him saying they solved the John G. mystery a year ago, and he's basically been using him to get all the other John G's. Basically, John G's a common name. It's kind of like I have an obscure reference I'm not going to pull. The point being, John G is like it's kind of a common name amongst people, bad guys. So he's used to hunt down other John G's.
So that's kind of the Dexter thing I'm going for,
Yes, and basically but here's the corrupt angle. He pockets the cash and the resources.
Sure.
But again, so that's what he's getting out of it. But again, it's a question: is it all out of pity? Because the way he spins it, and this is where the ambiguity and the whole 75% comes into play here. Because again, he does say that he likes Lenny, and he's doing this out of a sense of you never would have gotten the full satisfaction of the revenge. So I just kept we kept doing it to other guys, because I thought it'd make you feel better, give you some semblance of feeling better. Does he mean that, or does he?
It's twisted because it kind of turns our main hero into like an inadvertent serial killer.
In a sense, I mean, there's another, and I hope the MCU is listening because there's a Winter Soldier movie in this, I'm sure.
Oh God,
there is. He got mind wiped a lot. Okay, no. In all seriousness, though, again, it's a question like, is it purely out of pity and friendship, or is it purely because of the money? Because let me put it this way, D. I love the movie, but to me, the hardest sell of the movie does come with this reveal. The hard sell for me is, it's a bit of a hard sell that Teddy would go out of his way so much for this one guy. Because he goes through a lot, and the fact
I think it's for the money. That'd be my guess.
Yes, it's for the money, but what I'm saying is, don't you think it's just a little strange that we see our guys resourceful, by all means. Our guys resourceful. Again, the insurance business has trained him well in that Lenny, he can figure himself out of a situation. He ends up finding all these John G's. The guy's an avid mystery solver, but again, I'll remind you, not a cop. So why would Teddy just like take this one victim in particular and says, I just rinse and repeat. I'll go through, he'll lay out the breadcrumb trails. I'll be behind him. I'll clean up his mess. I'll do all this extra stuff. Again, for a big payday, sure, but it's more of the sense of like, off the books, I'm just going to find a drug dealer, kill him, or I'll let this guy kill him. Basically, it's like so he doesn't get his own hands there. It's the only logic I have as to why he has another guy. He outsources it to another guy. Like that's the big sell for me. It's a little hard to swallow, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh. I mean, it's cool. I mean, for the sake of the movie, I'll look past it. I'm saying it's really
right.
It gets us the movie, and it's like it's a working system. I get it, but it's just essentially the fact that we've done this so many other times. That's where we start to like, man, they've done a lot of. It just keeps on going. Okay.
No, I hear you. I don't think like this is a great twist, but I don't think it's Nolan mastering the art of the Nolan twist yet.
And again,
that's going to come with the next. That's going to come with the Prestige. Honestly,
exactly.
I think the Prestige might be the perfect Nolan twist.
Basically, like in the early steps, Nolan, there's a little bit of wiggle room there. Like, okay, I'm going to kind of fine tune that to the point where we get to like a Batman Begins or so.
And I mean, that's the thing, Dragon, is that as iconic as this movie is, I was kind of reading some reviews, and the main thing people were pointing out back in the day is that they were pointing out the plot holes of for example, like how is Leonard able to remember the details of his condition in the first place? You know what I mean?
Right. That's a good point.
Right. So if the last thing he remembers is his wife dying, then how does he remember what his condition even is?
Well, to be fair, he doesn't know what the name of his condition. Well, then again, here's the thing. I assume you could make the assumption that, again, he just knows he can't remember certain things, and he doesn't have a name for the condition. It is antegrade amnesia, but that word is never uttered in the movie.
That's true. That's
true.
true.
The question of is he not boring people with the full-on explanation, or does he just not know? Because, by the way, before I forget about it, one of the things I really want to give props to Guy Pearce for, the best thing that he's doing in the movie is, as we mentioned with Sammy Jenkins here, as we're going to get to, is that the Lenny character, he's playing along as he's playing catch-up within a scene. Therefore, you can see him after he's forgotten something. He's just saying, like people are asking, like in the tattoo part is the best example. It's okay, so the idea is, so after after essentially we began the movie and we moved backwards. Which, by the way, a little fun fact, on the DVD there's an Easter egg when you can watch the movie linearly.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. Have you ever done that?
I have. Unfortunately, I don't have it on. I don't have it. But
oh man, I'm sure it wouldn't be as impactful, but I'd love to give it a watch just for curiosity.
It's neat from what I hear. But what I'm getting is, basically, so after he's threw the keys out there, and basically he's got a head start away from Teddy, but again, Teddy's trying to get the car away from him, so he follows him to the tattoo parlor. When Teddy re-enters that tattoo parlor, and he's asking questions like, "Hey, Lenny, what are you doing here?" or whatnot, Lenny doesn't recognize him, and he's just saying, "Oh, apparently I was getting something important tattooed on me," because again, he's just trying to rationalize what am I doing here in the moment. So again, like that's the stuff I'm talking about. Like Guy Pearce is so great with just piecing together. He's pretending like he can remember things for a bit before he can decide if he can trust.
You know what I kind of I have a good example. So I'm sure everyone's been through this where like someone approaches you like, hey man, we went to middle school together, and he just does not look familiar at all.
Yeah,
but you kind of just have to fake your way of like, oh hey you, yeah, good times.
The Guy Pearce is excellent at faking it.
But that's what Guy Pearce is going through in every one of his social interactions, and that's why he's so good at faking it, is because that's his worldview of social interactions. That's what he has to do by necessity.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the Sammy Jenkins of it all.
Oh man, this is I really like this twist as well. We already mentioned how twisted the diabetes thing was, that suicide, but then to have it kind of turn on its head, kind of have the whole, have sort of like a light Tyler Durden quality to this twist of like, oh my god, he really is Sammy. They're one and the same person. There was no Sammy Jenkins.
So it's really great here. I love how Jenkins is played by Stephen Tobolowsky. Now, Stephen Tobolowsky, of course, great actor. He's of course, many people know him as Ryerson, Ned Ryerson. Of course, it's ironic given how much we play with time in that movie, and of course, we kind of mess with time. It's kind of ironic that we like Nolan must also be a Bill Murray fan, but I don't know. Anyway. Point being, Tobolowsky apparently in real life, one of the things that he told Nolan when he got the movie is basically he was told by he and Tobolowsky, Jenkins is kind of a linchpin of the movie, given the big reveal of the film. So again, like his performance, small as it is, again, brief as it is, again, like these Jenkins scenes, and we check in with him now and again because we see like the memory tests and everything going with Jenkins, and again, Jenkins is kind of tied into the whole is this kind of fated to? Is Lenny fated to have this memory problem because he kind of put this poor guy through the ringer? And Tobolowsky in real life, he suffered from amnesia. He had basically took some medication before surgery that kind of caused him lapses in his memory. So he had kind of a
wow,
a period of amnesia while he was getting ready for that sort of thing. So he kind of drew from that. So it's kind of
that was like an unfortunate but ultimately happy accident, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean he's fine now. I'm just saying,
of course,
taking the medication. So that's the thing. So this is where we get into the area where I'm questioning if Teddy is telling the truth here, because again, the Jenkins
for me, it's not as ambiguous as it is for you. I don't know.
I mean, again, it's entirely possible because we pull the rug out from under us here. Where again we see the same shots, but like he's pinching his wife to where he's injecting his wife, and it's and as we saw earlier with Tobolowsky doing it with his wife, and again, like it's less that's the question of, let me put it this way, it's less the fact that he may be Jenkins. I guess it's more the fact of like, is his wife dead or not?
Right.
Because we learned that his wife, by the way, played by Georgia Fox, pre-CSI. It's kind of you never see her anymore. It's kind of like, it's Georgia Fox from CSI. It's just kind of dropped off the face of the earth.
I mean, it's funny that you're bringing this up, Dragon, because this kind of speaks to the ambiguity and kind of like the, dare I say, with The Dark Knight on mind, the multiple choice quality to this film, where, essentially I have not even ever considered the idea that the wife might be still alive. I always thought that, my read on it went about as far as like, okay, so his wife, Leonard's wife, was the one who, essentially killed herself through the insulin injections, and there was no other person, there was no other couple. They were the couple.
I know that's the thing. That's what I'm talking about. This is where it gets ambiguous because you read it that way until there's a line of dialogue that Teddy says, and this is why I'm questioning how much of Teddy's stuff I can trust. After we set that up, we're okay. You assume just visually, going by it visually, okay, the same thing that happened with her is what happened. But then Teddy says, essentially his wife became distant after the rape. So basically, after her rape and her attack, and after, because remember, he shot the one guy, and then of course the other guy got away. And after he was injured, he was knocked out, and the other crook ran away to eventually be kind of caught like a year or so later. Anyway, point being, his wife, living with his condition, she couldn't take it, and they were like kind of vaguely distant, and she left, and he assumed that she died. But again, he can't remember it.
Right.
Won't be until he tattooed on his body, presumably. That's where we're in the tricky territory where, again, there's a bit of a logic breakdown there. But again, you don't know. We assume that she died, but there's like a line where he's kind of playing mind games with her. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And to me, the subtlest touch is like I thought it was so brilliant when we see, because remember, she's like in the waiting room after his accident, implying that she survived. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Where, like, for her to be insulin to death, it would be after his accident. Therefore, but again, it would be, he still could have been insulin.
Right.
I guess what I'm getting at here is my favorite subtle touch in the whole movie is the eye thing, where we keep seeing these cryptic shots of her during the accident before we show the accident happen. Remember, like before he conks his head and everything. Sure. And she has the shower curtain on her head, and if you look, she blinks. That implies life to me. It's like, oh God, she's alive, and that's I think it's like a stylistic choice. But then you see, like, maybe she just blinked when they shot it, but no, it's like there are no accidents with Nolan. Apparently, that blink implies life.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So speaking of the signatures of Nolan.
Yeah, of course, this is kind of Nolan's bottle rocket, if you will, to kind of to kind of cite Wes Anderson here, where I feel like a lot of the storytelling tropes are on display, but maybe not so much the ambitious visual quality. Although we do get some visual distinction here, of course, with the black and white and the color, kind of playing around with that. Playing around with the whole idea of like reverse time and everything. That's certainly the biggest Nolanism in this movie, is the structure. That is where Nolan's fingerprints are all over it. Visually, like I said, we don't get as much. It isn't really until The Prestige, I would say, where Nolan kind of like really comes into his own on a visual level. But but still, this film is very finely crafted and deliberate. So, like I said, it's kind of like Nolan sort of like picking up the pieces of his style. But obviously, in terms of the actual storytelling, it's very much a Nolan movie. Like, this is a Nolan fans Nolan movie with, the structure of it all.
Yeah. Speaking of color, again, outside of the black and white, obviously, we have a lot of blues and whites, which reflect Lenny's color. So that's also really, it's kind of like Nolan doing some fun color stuff. We have a confined chase scene where he's running away from the drug dealer, and basically as he's being shot at. And of course, I love it when we have very Inception-y when he's running like closed, really confined corridors.
Yeah, for sure.
Few familiar. Nolan likes to use familiar actors. He likes to use them in a few pieces. We have two here of note. Larry Holden. So Jimmy Grant's the guy who remember how creepy it was when he killed Jimmy Grant's, where he told him like, take off your suit, take off the pants, where he doesn't take off the pants because he doesn't want to get blood on him. I love this thing. How gritty and how violent he just strangles the life out of the guy. It's really dark noir. And that's what I'm talking about, the arc of Lenny. It gets so dark by the end of things, but again, he's gonna be such a chipper guy afterwards. So this guy plays Finch in Batman Begins. Katie Holmes is Rachel's the DA pal, the other half of the Harvey Dent of it all, before they actually had Harvey Dent. Let's see, the other one, Mark Boone, Flass from Batman Begins. He's Burt the manager. He's it's the same guy. It's Flass. Let's see, a lot of real world science and memory testing, like again with Tobolowsky's testing his memory.
Yeah. I'm glad you're bringing this up. A lot of kind of like pseudoscience working its way into a fictionalized setting. Yeah. For sure, that's definitely a trademark of his.
And Nolan's shooting on 35 millimeter, very much kind of the cinematography of Nolan's basically trademark cinematography starts to come into play this movie. Let's see. Again, the visual cues. As I mentioned, the eye blink. You have stuff like you constantly see you saw the little insulin needle pop up now and again. So again, like these little cryptic shots, and again, for like he's like tapping the pen to tapping the needle. So again, it's like he's tapping it versus it's in color too, which is a little tip off.
Right. Kind of just generally speaking, just the whole idea of like having things be ambiguous and not what they seem, and kind of having Nolan's film sort of be like a puzzle that the audience need to figure out more so than an overall cohesive narrative.
Absolutely.
All right. Final thoughts, Dragon. Let's hear them on your end.
Final thoughts for me. It's a very inventive film, very strong foundation. Nolan's first steps into the big leagues, one could say. It's you have a director with a plan in every sense of the word with this movie. I do question a bit of logic by the very end, but again, but it's so beautifully structured and kind of and kind of fundamentally in the DNA of the Christopher Nolan film. It makes more than makes up for it. I think this is it's kind of like the Don Bluth thing we were talking about, Bluth Timber. Well, it's kind of like Nolan kind of Nolan shook up and challenged the industry in a major way with this movie. He kind of woke them up, like, guys, wake up! This is the movie you can be doing. Like, do it better. He which of course he would later on do stuff like Batman Begins with the origin movie or the comic book movie, kind of shake things up in a fundamental way. And again, like even before it gets to that, which of course the industry very much now very predicated on the superhero. Way before then, you have something with Memento, which kind of shakes up the industry as a whole. Like, guys, we can be making movies that look a lot better and also kind of structured a lot better. Again, like you have in the tomes of the filmmakers, you have a Wells, you have a Hitchcock, you also have a Nolan in there nowadays. It's kind of like, again, this was a big deal.
Absolutely. All right, yeah. Final thoughts on my end. It's not my favorite Nolan movie, but I do definitely think it's a very admirable movie, especially for not a first-time filmmaker, but for someone who is kind of like fresh out of film school. And I do think it's an incredibly influential movie in terms of having a non-cohesive narrative structure and really making it work and kind of bringing it to a more mainstream setting than anything like this had ever been attempted before. I mean, this certainly wasn't a mainstream movie, but this was absolutely a bigger kind of like cult hit than a lot of other like experimental films like this at the time. It did kind of definitely bloom an underground cult following, and that cult following kind of like blossomed into Nolan's fan base, the Nolanites that we have today. And so, it's definitely a riveting movie. I think the episodic structure of it very much kind of keeps you on your toes. You're always kind of anxious to see what's happening next. And I feel like, to quote Lois Griffin, Dragon, to paraphrase her with the Da Vinci Code, it makes you feel really smart because all the segments are short and you can follow it and kind of put the pieces together as you go along. But honestly, I really like that. It's a puzzle, but it's not too complicated of a puzzle. And yet there are very head-scratching elements to it. I think it's a perfectly packaged little enigma of a movie, Dragon. I like it a lot.
So, we have something from Simba Trey here before we go. So we should probably...
Go ahead.
Let's see. Great retrospective, fellas. Now we're in the final thoughts. So what do you think the next retrospective will be? Basically, a couple suggestions here by Simba Trey.
Okay.
We have Terminator 2, Aliens, presumably the sequel. The Thing, which of course mentioned earlier, Back to the Future, lovely movie, Gone Girl, Prometheus, a few of my favorites, says Simba Trey.
Well, I can tell you, Simba, that the next thing we're going to be doing after this is going to be Christmas stuff for December. Like, we're going to be doing seasonal shenanigans like we've been doing, in which we kind of pick out like, some good holiday, basically anything except for episodes of TV shows. So Christmas-based movies, Christmas specials on TV, stuff of that nature. That'll be our next segment. Yeah. In regards to retrospectives, you are definitely not the first person to suggest Terminator. We might go down that route. I know Dragon's not a horror guy, so I don't know if Alien's going to be in the cards. Dragon, we definitely did a Back to the Future retrospective at some point, Simba. So that'll be on our channel. I think if you just search our channel for Back to the Future, you should be able to find that video.
Yeah, and we did cover Terminator 2 in the Fan Appreciation Day, but
I wouldn't blame him for not wanting to sift through
that. Yeah, I mean, there's a long sit, and also maybe not our greatest stuff.
Yeah.
Going was the Ben Affleck movie, right?
Yes. I mean, in terms of stuff we're doing like in 2020, we definitely we started some projects that we want to kind of continue with. So, for example, the Disney Channel original movies, we want to get a few more of those in there. I believe we've got one more month of Nicktoons Movie Month, right?
God.
Or is that over with? Did we kind of tie the bow on that one? I
Well,
think
do you
we
mean
might have
live
tied the
action
bow
or
on.
animated?
No, I'm thinking animated, but I think what's accurate is that we have live action Nickelodeon still, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, Spielberg month is going to be coming back around, but once that comes back around, we'll be getting into pretty obscure Spielberg by that point. Let's see, anything else?
Well, we have. God, I mean, in terms of, we'll be doing some character retrospectives in February. I can't confirm who they're going to be on yet. It's going to be some, it's for Black History heroes, but we have to settle on some stuff there, like which characters. But we're doing some stuff there.
One of the filmmakers that I would very much like to cover in the future in this sort of context is definitely Wes Anderson. I think he would be the next director that I would be interested in doing a podcast retrospective on. So I'll throw that out there. I'm not sure how keen you are on the idea, Dragon, but I'd love to do it. I feel like Wes Anderson is a director that, much like Nolan, it's very fascinating to kind of like trace his career and trace his style through the films.
And Simba found the Back to the Future thing we did a while ago. Hopefully it'll hold up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, folks, we've come to the end of our story. Or is it only the beginning? Don't forget to check your watch before we make our disappearing act. We'll be back before the top tumbles on the next installment of Nolan-Vember. Womp. Womp. Lenny.